What's up, humans? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Dr. Jasel Martin, aka DrJazzyfit. And today I'll be having a conversation with Dr. Philippe Douyon about the psychological and physiological consequences of divorce. And we will also be talking about our own personal experiences with divorce and how we have transitioned and kind of overcome certain things. But we will also be talking about ways that you guys can possibly deal with things, as for those who are going through a divorce now, for those who have gone through in the past. This is a gradual process, and it's something that we all learn along the way. So unfortunately, divorce happens. Do I believe that it's what God originally intended for us to engage in? Absolutely not. However, your divorce is not a life sentence. And so I want you to be able to rebound and be healthy and happy and figure out tools that help you become your best selves, your most authentic selves, so that you can continue giving back to others and you can live your life and you can find love and pursue life, liberty, and find happiness. Hello, YouTube, and welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Jasel Martin, aka DrJazzyfit, and on this channel, we talk about different ways to maintain a healthy lifestyle through a variety of different mechanisms. So today, we are talking about divorce and health outcomes, and we are featuring yours truly, Dr. Philippe Douyon. And do you want to say hi to the people?
Hi, thank you for having me back. So I'm a board certified neurologist. I'm an epilepsy specialist. I'm the founder of the company, the Inley Brain Fit Institute, which is a health and wellness company. I'm the creator of the app, Dr. Duyon's Brain Fit, which is a game that teaches people about how food and exercise impacts your overall health, but especially the health of your brain. And I'm also the author of the book, Neuroplasticity, Your Brain's Superpower.
Your Brain Superpower. I love that title. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here yet again. We appreciate your expertise and just general feedback on life lessons that we're all trying to work out, right? So today we're going to talk about divorce and health outcomes and how people can possibly overcome some of the things that you experience going through divorce. So both of us are divorcees, I guess that's the proper term. But do you have anything that you want to share with the people as far as some of the things that you may have experienced after divorce?
Yeah, so I think, obviously people know that divorce is really hard, but I don't think people realize that divorce is traumatic and your brain and your body respond to it as if it's a trauma. Right? And so for that reason, you end up seeing a lot of physical health symptoms that come up, obviously a lot of emotional and mental health symptoms that come up. And it's just a natural reaction to how your body and your brain respond to traumas in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think all of the consequences of divorce are evident right away either. I think that sometimes it takes time to really manifest and really observe some of the changes that have happened and how you perceive life itself. I can say for myself, I went through somewhat of an identity crisis after my divorce, after having been married almost 10 years, getting married really young, and then finding myself entering my 30s as a divorced woman I didn't really understand what my place was in life at that point. Like, but at the same time, it's like my role has changed so significantly. It's like, for myself and for other people, I have noticed that it can really rock your self-esteem and your self-efficacy perception as to how you handle life. For some people, for most people, marriage is a really big deal. So the fact that your marriage didn't work out is like one of the ultimate failures for many people. How does that type of perception play a role on your brain does it reformat anything as far as your physiological makeup in your brain?
Yeah, so divorce actually changes your brain. It changes the neurochemistry in your brain. And it does so in at least a few different areas of the brain. So if we talk about the hippocampus, the part of the brain that is on the middle aspect of your temporal lobes, your hippocampus plays a huge role in short-term memory. When people are going through divorce or going through any trauma, one of the things that we see is that your cortisol level goes up. And cortisol is at high levels is really damaging to the neurons in the hippocampus, right? So let's take this example. You're sitting in your office right now. Mm-hmm. If there was a lion that walked into your office, that would be pretty scary, right? That would be pretty traumatic. Your body would secrete a huge amount of cortisol because you're trying to figure out, how am I going to survive this attack? Mm-hmm. If somehow you survive the lion being in your room, 2 weeks from now, you're telling this story to your friends about how a lion walked into your office, and they say, well, what were you doing in your office at that time? You may not even remember what you were doing in your office, right? Because those levels of cortisol will actually kill neurons in your hippocampus. And so you're not making any other memory with the exception of focusing on that emotional threat. Okay? And so we see the same thing happen in people that experience all types of traumas, including divorce. They're not making new memories. They are only focused on what is the perceived threat, right? So if there was a betrayal in the marriage or the rejection of the divorce, that's all that they're focused on. They hardly remember the good times. And certainly if their ex-spouse is doing something good in the moment, they have a really hard time seeing that as well, right? So it changes the hippocampus. When you get divorced, your fight or flight system goes into high gear. So our bodies have what we call the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So your hypothalamus is a part of the brain. Your pituitary is a gland that sits towards the middle of the brain, but actually outside the brain a little bit, but certainly responsible for the production of a lot of different hormones. And then your adrenal gland sits on top of your kidneys and plays a role in the secretion of a lot of different hormones. So your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis plays a huge role in regulating a lot of different body systems. Plays a role in regulating your mood, plays a role in regulating your digestive tract, your sexual appetite, your food appetite, your level of energy. When that goes up, right, when your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis system goes up, and so that's when we see levels of cortisol go up. That's when we see adrenaline go up. And that stuff tends to have, over a long period of time, some really devastating impacts. So your adrenaline goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, right? All of a sudden now, you've got high blood pressure. You're not metabolizing things the way that you should be, right? Your appetite goes up and you're constantly eating. You may be having changes in your mood, your levels of anxiety. So it plays a significant role in how our brain just evolves.
Thank you for that. With all of those changes, how does that impact perception? Because a lot of the consequences that come, especially from a mental place, I mean, you have guilt, you have anxiety or stress like you were talking about, you have depression, insomnia. There's a host of other coping mechanisms that people have after divorce. But I personally boil all of that back down to perception and how we kind of formulate these stories in our mind. How does all of those physiological changes that you're just describing impact your perception?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the way that I define perception, it's about your level of awareness to things, right? And so your perception can be influenced by a lot of different a lot of different things, not only your internal systems, but things that you're exposed to in your outside environment. I said before that you're not making any new memories because cortisol is having a really detrimental impact on the neurons within your hippocampus. That limits what you're going to be aware of, right? That is going to focus your attention to the negative things about your divorce. That's going to keep you in this emotionally negative space, right? I tell people all the time that our brains are out of control. If you're having a bad day or a bad moment, right, all of a sudden you start thinking not only about the person that might have upset you and everything that's wrong with them, you may be thinking about everything that's wrong with you. You may be thinking about everything that's wrong with the world, things that have no significant impact in that moment on your life. But you just start thinking about everything that's negative, right? That's your brain just going completely out of control. And so that negative cycle of thinking gets triggered very, very easily. And if all we're doing now is perceiving things that are negative around us, that's certainly going to impact how we go about our lives and how we're showing up in our day.
Yeah, this is an excellent point. I consider that rumination. I call that rumination, when people get so deep into thought, they kind of go down the rabbit hole, and it's the negative thinking rabbit hole where they start, any tiny little flaw that might be pretty minuscule, all of a sudden becomes this huge mountain of a problem. And then you have mountain on top of mountain on top of mountain, and it's easy to see how people could easily go down a depression type of spiral in this type of when they experience this type of horrible experience. And can divorce ever be positive? Is that possible?
Well, I think everything is about the mindset that you take in. So the big moments in our lives are not necessarily defined by what we're going through in that moment. And it's certainly not defined by what our knowledge base is. It's really defined by how we think about those situations that we happen to be going through. So some people will say, look, not everything is meant to last, but they focus on the things that were really positive that have come out of a potential divorce, right? There might have been real love there for a number of years. There might be children that they've had together. They might have had some really great memories that are lasting memories. So it all depends on how you decide to think about, the situation that you find yourself in. The reality is that, I'm a big believer that we're all meant to evolve every few years. We should not stay stagnant. And sometimes people evolve at a completely different pace. They evolve in completely different directions. Sometimes somebody is supposed to be in your life for just a season, right? I think as long as you are learning from whatever that situation was and you are growing as a result, then that's really a positive thing to take away.
I have a saying that I tell myself. It's called reasons, seasons, and lifetime. And sometimes people they fall into one of those categories. Sometimes they fall into all of the categories. It just depends on the role that they're meant to play. I do truly believe in the biblical application of marriage and what that is supposed to be. I do believe that marriage should be forever, and that's how God originally designed it to be. However, living in a sinful, fallen world with sinful, fallen people who have all kinds of flaws, these things happen. So it's just a matter of being able to rebuild and regroup and kind of redefine who you are. But unfortunately, that's not the pattern that we really see when we look at general society. Look at the health outcomes of divorced individuals versus those who've never been married or those who have never gone through a divorce. You have your immune system is impaired. You have people who have higher incidences of cancer and heart disease and hypertension and all of these other different chronic illnesses, which we know are largely attributed to stress. You talked about cortisol. Many divorced individuals they actually carry more body weight and more body fat than their non-divorced counterparts. There's a lot to be said about that. I mean, you could look at it from the angle of a single mother who might not have time to go to the gym. She might be carrying multiple hats. Maybe that's a cause, or an attributing cause to the weight gain. You might have someone else who is overeating and, expressing their stress in a different way. But all in all, we see a trend that more divorcees are overweight. And I wonder, with the divorce rate being so high in North America, if that is, this is just totally anecdotal. I haven't read any studies on this, but I wonder if the reason why we have so many, if there's any relationship between the enhanced or the overinflated divorce rate and the amount of people who are also obese and overweight in this country. I have not to date seen a study like that. For those of you out there who are researchers, this might be a good thing to research, but I just wonder, because the mortality rate is shockingly higher for divorcees than non. And with obesity playing such a huge role in mortality and longevity, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of reasons that we see people being overweight. And certainly cortisol plays a huge role in excessive weight gain, right? So stress is not good for the body or the brain at all. And I think that the way that we approach divorce is part of the problem, right? I mean, for a lot of people, divorce becomes absolute war. And we have a legal system that perpetuates that, right? I mean, the reality is lawyers make more money the longer that, the exes are fighting, right? And so I think that the legal aspect plays a huge role. People are dividing up assets, or there are, what somebody might be paying in child support, what somebody might be paying in just to their ex-spouse. People end up losing a lot, not just financially, right? But certainly a lot of people may lose friends, and they may lose their normal support network. Children might be taken away, right? So I think that the way that we approach divorce is a significant problem. In theory, two people get married because they loved each other. And I think that people need to focus on the fact that there was love there at some point. And why would you try to hurt the person that you've loved at some point, right? Why would they all of a sudden become your absolute worst enemy? Why would you be trying to go and essentially, in some cases, destroy their lives? So I think we need to take a completely different approach, because I think you're right that divorce has a significant impact on morbidity and mortality. People get a lot sicker, and people die a lot earlier.
Yeah, it's really sad. And really talking about stress, I've read that women tend to hold on to stressful events longer than men. Like, a man and a woman can both experience the same event, and the woman will hold on to the stress longer. Is there any truth to that statement?
So I think people process stress in different ways, right? I think people cope with stress in different ways. One of the things that you will see sometimes after divorce, or even in the midst of divorce, is that people move on very, very quickly, right? And so when you are in a marriage, you have your feel-good hormones sort of at fairly decent levels, right? So your dopamine is higher, and dopamine plays a huge role in reward, motivation, but also addiction. But it helps you to feel good. It makes you want to do certain things. Your oxytocin levels are higher, which is the bonding hormone. All of a sudden, you deplete those things when somebody gets divorced, right? There's a lot of rejection. Those hormones go down. People are not feeling as good about themselves. They're not feeling bonded to anybody. They're not feeling motivated to do things. And so people start to search for that feeling again, because that feeling is powerful. That feeling is addictive, right? And so you'll see people move on very quickly, not so much because they fall in love, although that's what they might call it, but because they're in search of those feel-good feelings. So it's very reactionary. They're reacting to how the neurochemistry in their brain is shifting.
Very interesting. Does that shift in neurochemistry have to do with social bonding and relationships outside of the divorce? It's related to divorce, but sometimes your social network, as you mentioned, changes completely. Some people that you interacted with in that marriage, you no longer interact with, or for various reasons. Does that also impact that neurochemistry?
Yeah, look, people, family and friends often feel like they have to choose sides in a divorce, right? And so there are winners and losers in divorces. And our brains have evolved over time for us to be very social creatures. A lot of things that we do, it is to sort of facilitate that social connectedness that we want to other people. And when you lose that social support, that becomes a significant problem. Right? And oftentimes people will do what they can to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically, and I can't speak for men, obviously, I'm not a man, but I know just from research and from personal experience that women tend to have a higher level of self-identity issue, simply because in the marriage they typically will try to be a really great wife, great mother. There might be adjustments that they've made to their career, depending on how that looked. But then all of a sudden, here you are trying to figure out this new space, and you're also trying to figure out, okay, well, I need new friends, but I also don't know who I am. So how can someone really maneuver around all of those huge question marks that they might be experiencing? It's a pretty stressful time when you're trying to rebuild, but you also don't know what you want. You don't know what to rebuild or where to start. So for someone who's trying to put those pieces together, where is a good place to start?
Yeah, so I think, look, when you are married, you operate, your identity is really meshed with your spouse, right? So you become so-and-so's husband or so-and-so's wife, and you do a lot of things together. And so you do lose part of that when you get divorced. But the reality is that every challenge that we face in our lives gives us the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to evolve, the opportunity to do better. And so you could be like, oh man, now I'm divorced. I'm a failure. My marriage failed. I suck at life, right? Or you could be like, no, now I can truly find who I am. Now I can truly go out there, figure out what my purpose is, figure out what my passions are, do the things that I've always wanted to do, travel the world, get a new social support network around me, people who truly see me for who I am and absolutely believe in the things that I want to do. It's a really great opportunity to evolve for the better, to take the lessons learned from the marriage that didn't last forever and make yourself a better person. So that way, maybe in future relationships down the line, you don't repeat the same sort of mistakes, or you have something absolutely extraordinary. Because one thing that I often see is that people live very mediocre lives, which means that they've got mediocre jobs, They've got mediocre relationships, they've got mediocre love lives, they've got mediocre marriages. Right? And so I think when there's a challenge, when something doesn't go the way that you expected it to, it just offers you an opportunity to be extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of continuing on that same vein, I really like to shift the conversation to talking about solutions for healing and how people can heal from a situation. We don't want to just present the problem, but for people out there who are looking for resources to improve themselves, my first suggestion would be to really sometimes take a step back and reevaluate who you are. When I was going through my process, I even wrote down certain things that were key values to who I am as a person. And kind of reframed my mind around that. Something else that I personally experienced was, one of those values was making sure that I was heard and seen for who I am in all of my relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a friendship, whatever. I was like, I don't have time to just have friendships of convenience or relationships of convenience. They need to have meaning. And if both people are not growing emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, then that's a parameter that I set for having or not having someone in my life. But being able to be very structured and create clear boundaries was also something that was established in that time by myself. And I think ultimately people are really sometimes terrified to be alone. They're terrified to be in their thoughts and to really explore who they are. Maybe they don't like themselves. Maybe they have all this prior baggage that they're carrying that they let define who their present self is. What can you say to that about people, and I don't want to say retreating, but really taking the time to be alone and to let your thoughts be your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't think people truly value quietness the way that they should, right? When you look at people who do great things in this world, they always talk about meditating or praying. There is significant importance to just taking time and sitting in quietness, taking that time to be mindful, to meditate, to pray. Solutions often come from moments of silence. They don't come when you are busy running around, meeting new people, dating new people really quickly, right? You do have to take that time to figure out who you are and to figure out what the solutions are going to be for your life to be whatever you imagine it to be. That solution is not going to come from anybody else. The love that you need is not going to come from anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, self-love it's pivotal. It's pivotal is probably not the right word, but it is vastly important. You can't do anything else. No other level of healing is going to come if you don't first learn to love yourself. For people who are spiritual, you have other guiding principles like, the love of Christ or whoever their salvific character is in their faith. However, all of that, and I'm not saying that the love of God is not important. I truly don't believe that you can feel the love of God if you don't have a certain level of love for yourself to a certain degree. You can know that God loves you, but to be able to really feel that and mobilize on that takes a certain level of, because God loves me, I'm going to love myself. I'm special enough to do something and not just be here and be a bump on the log. I'm going to actually make a difference in this world and try to have a healthier, happier life. I don't think that there's enough conversation around how those two work together. Because you have your extrinsic love and factors, and then you have your intrinsic things. What ultimately motivates someone from an intrinsic perspective to help I guess, support and encourage the awareness that, hey, you know what? I love myself. I am pretty okay with who this person is. What motivates that? Where does that come from?
Well, I think that process is different for everybody, right? Some people have to hit rock bottom before that they start doing the work on themselves. And as a neurologist, I see people develop neurological symptoms because they allow the wrong people in their lives, right? You have to be very careful with who you decide to have in your life, whether it's a friendship or something romantic. The people that you have in your life influence every aspect of your life. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't think you have a lot to lose, every single one of us has a lot to lose, right? So somebody coming into your life can affect your health. They can affect your physical health. They can affect your emotional health. They can affect your finances, your relationship with your family and friends. So you have to be very, very careful with who you decide to let in your life. And if you have a lot of love for yourself, you're going to realize that not just anybody is entitled to come in and out, right? You're going to be very protective of your personal space, and you should be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Would you say that a certain level of selfishness is needed in order to kind of establish and uphold these boundaries and this level of self-love?
Yeah, I don't know if we have to attach titles or certain words to it. I think, look, you've got to love yourself. You've got to do what is best for yourself, right? And sometimes other people are not going to like that. But as long as it works out well for you, that's what really matters. There's no reason to always be concerned with what other people think. Mm-hmm. The reality is most people live very mediocre lives. Extraordinary people that are doing really amazing things, don't have time to constantly criticize other people, right? And in fact, they want other people to be as successful as possible. And so you've got to do what is good for you, what is good for your children, if you've got children, what allows you to live the life that you feel like you were meant to live.
Absolutely. And I asked that question because when it comes to this particular topic, I've heard people, especially parents and single mothers, who will say, oh, I feel very selfish. I feel like I'm being selfish by prioritizing myself over my kids or over, certain family members or friends. And I think that there's a certain level of backwardsness. I know that's not really a word, but it's just backwards, where it's like you can't really love other people unless you love yourself to some degree, unless you have some level of love to give. You can't continuously pour the love, real love, out of a broken vessel. So if you've not taken the time to heal and do the self-work that's needed, how can you give real love, not fake, admiration or I'm going to make you feel good, but where it's very genuine and it's real for a sustainable amount of time? I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, I say this to colleagues, I say this to friends, you cannot take care of other people unless you take care of yourself first and foremost, right? Mm-hmm. But now we can take that a step further. It depends on what your idea is of taking care of yourself. So some people are like, yeah, I'm gonna prioritize myself today. I'm gonna be a little selfish. I'm gonna go out and drink. Well, that's stupid. Like, what is that really? Is that your idea of taking care of yourself? Is that your idea of doing for you? Is that what you're showing your children? Or yeah, I'm gonna go take care of myself. I'm just gonna go party all weekend. Well, maybe, we should always have a good time, but maybe that's not the best way to take care of yourself, right? You've got to take care of yourself physically. You've got to take really good care of your body, right? And not be putting in substances into your body that are detrimental to your health, regardless of if the government says it's legal or not. You've got to take care of your mind. You've got to take care of your emotions. You've got to take care of yourself spiritually, Right? So you've got to be very mindful about how you go about taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And how would you say, or what role would you say that the people who you choose to be in your social support system, what level of influence do they have on that ability?
Yeah, I mean, so the people that you have around you have a significant impact on your life, right? I mean, they often say, like, if you want to look at to where you are, just look at the 5 people that are closest to you. So if you've got people that are not sort of evolving in the way that you'd like, or they're kind of behind you a little bit in some ways, they're going to pull you back. Right? They're going to be like, why are you reading those books? Why are you going to church? Why you know, like, you make decent money. Why are you trying to get a new job? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? They're going to pull you back. And if you've got people who are doing things that you really aspire to do, right, they're going to pull you up. So you've got to be very mindful about the people that you have in your social circle. And it's okay to say, look, you know, I can't be as close to this person as I used to. Some people it's okay to just completely get rid of in your life, right? And at the very least, other people you've got to hold at a distance.
That's true. And that could be really hard. I say for me personally, that could be really difficult. But the level of peace sometimes is, there's just no trade-off as to that, you know, being able to set those parameters for yourself. So I know that we are, you know, really deep into this conversation, but I want to give people a few more topics and some of the things that we kind of touched on as far as solutions could be so far. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but creating a new self-identity, if you need to, becoming an emotionally healthier person. We also have leaning on or establishing a new support system if necessary. Sometimes some people are truly in your life for a lifetime, and that is great. That is fantastic. And it's okay also if people are in your life for a seasonal period. That's okay too. I've also seen it where people are in your life for non-consecutive seasons of life, where you guys are growing, you might grow apart, you might come back together, it just depends. And just being open and receptive to those changes. But I would also really add in there, like, people really need to find what they enjoy, find what they're passionate about. I watched a documentary the other day with my daughter, and they did a competition with a test group against another one, where some of them were rewarded for money and they were doing something, and then others, they did the exact same activity, but they did it just from a fun perspective. And those who were just having fun and there was no monetary association related to it, they actually did better. They had much better outcomes. And I say that to say that we go through life sometimes out of obligation. And so minimizing the obligations in some areas, I mean, sometimes you just have to do what needs to be done. But aside from that, you have the rest of your life that you're living, but people aren't typically enjoying their life. And so they're not being as fruitful or as productive as they could. So I would really encourage people to find what they love, or reestablish some of the things in their life that they love, whether it's joining different groups or playing an instrument or painting, running, working out, whatever it is, find your love. And I would also advise people to stay single until they're healthy and healed, and not just jump into another relationship simply because it's convenient, or you're lonely, or you're trying to mask the pain. You also mentioned meditation and prayer, and I would even throw in counseling. A lot of people out there need counseling, whether they're divorced or not. Just being able to have an objective ear to express, what people are telling the counselor, the therapist, but to be able to put that back on the person where they can really think through it and grow through whatever it is that they're dealing with. Finding new roles and continue to grow, self-identify. Don't stay where you are. And back to something you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, I would also add forgiveness. You mentioned that a lot of people, they really had love, real love there in their relationship at some point. And I know I can speak for myself. I can speak from numerous articles that I've read and talking to many people, but forgiveness is very key in moving on and healing, and just being healthy and whole. You can't just harbor that level of resentment forever.
Yeah, and I would say, look, it's not just about forgiving your ex-partner, it's about forgiving yourself, right?
Yes.
So the fact that a marriage didn't last forever, big deal, right? You do have the rest of your life to look forward to. Mm-hmm. And you don't want things that happened in the past to hold you back from having something extraordinary in the future. Right? I get to talk to a lot of people as they are approaching death. And the things that they regret about their lives are not like, oh, I wish I stayed in that bad relationship, or I wish that I worked more, or I wish that I made more money. It's about giving back to the world, feeling like they didn't get a chance to really express their gifts. They didn't get a chance to be as influential as possible. That they didn't get a chance to spend as much time with loved ones, right? That they let other people hold them back. That would be a significant regret. But we all have this extraordinary opportunity to not have those kind of regrets when our life comes to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. Exercising self-compassion for sure. And I think that also finding activities, as you were kind of mentioning, finding activities and things outside of yourself, that's also really good for people who like to ruminate and go down these rabbit holes of negative thinking as well. It helps you connect with positive people and other people who are doing similar things. And so that also helps kind of hone in your perception back to a positive place as well. So anyway, there's so much more we could talk about on this subject, but I truly hope that some of the things that we explore today will bless somebody out there. And I thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Have a good day, okay?